Welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. We're live here, Friday, February 14th. It's Valentine's Day, a special Valentine's Day. What just happened? Everyone's in love, I think. I'm not sure. I can't speak for everybody. I shouldn't say it. No, not everyone. But joining us, three great comedians who've been on before. Maysoon Zayid, comedian, actress, disability activist, had a #1 TED Talk, numerous TV shows, co-founder of the New York Arab American Comedy Festival with me, and doing a big show here in New York City, February 20th at Joe's Pub, which is a great venue, and she'll talk more about it later. Hello, Maysoon. Nice to see you.
Hey, Dean.
Happy Valentine's Day.
I'm definitely not in love. So no, you're not.
I'm sorry.
All of us.
But I think one of the next two's in love. Brian Wohl, it's his 4th wedding anniversary. We were just talking before we came on. Stand-up comic. He is the co-host of Smoke Show on the Try Guys Network, Try Guys channel. You've seen him on Hulu, Amazon Prime, Off-Broadway, and more. Brian, happy anniversary.
Oh, thanks, Dean. Happy Valentine's Day to you guys. It's the only happiness we got right now. It's pretty rough out there.
I wonder if it's making some people even more sad. Like, it's not the best day for certain people and for others. And Jimmy Tingle, who I think is in love. I'm not sure. He's been married for a long time. He's one of the top political comics in the nation. He's appeared in everything from The Tonight Show to 60 Minutes. He produced and started his own documentary called Jimmy Tingle's American Dream, which appeared on PBS. And he did another documentary, I think, after that. And you can see him in New York City, February 21st at the City Winery doing some stand-up there. Jimmy, nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Dean. Nice to see you, Brian and Maysoon. Great to be reacquainted with you all again. Obviously, happy Valentine's Day.
So a lot to cover. President Musk held a press conference in the White House, and he took questions while holding his baby, like he's the president, and Trump sat there. And there are so many still images of Trump that looking like disgusted at Musk. And I think that might be his resting face now. Like, he's not a happy person. I don't know what's wrong. I don't care what's wrong, but there's something wrong with him. But Maysoon, what's your take on this idea where Musk, I think, is really understanding he's like the president? He met with the prime minister of India yesterday before Trump met with him with a whole event with flags and everything. So what's your take on this?
Well, I'd like to start with the fact that I hate kids, but I like Elon Musk's son because I quite enjoyed the fact that he was bullying Trump within an inch of his life, and that what you call resting face looked like I'm about to have a stroke or a seizure face to me as a disability advocate that hangs out with a lot of people whose brains freezes up. As I was watching Trump, it seemed he was working so hard not to smack the shit out of that child, and it almost killed him. And I enjoyed watching the entire thing. Yeah, Elon Musk bought the presidency. What's the difference? No difference. It's the same as every administration behind it. Some billionaire, some rich guy, some rich person has stood behind every administration, dictates what every administration does. It's just like what we've been saying the whole time. The curtain has been lifted. They say the quiet part out loud. Musk owns Trump. Like, Trump is Musk's. That's it. He owns him. Like, this Valentine's Day, he could put him in a cage and feed him chocolate hearts and it would all be fine. He owns him. And so I think it's nice that it's all out loud. It's all in the open.
Interesting. So, Jimmy, Maysoon makes a very valid point. The wealthy people have always had a huge impact on politicians in America, especially since Citizens United, even before that, but afterwards, legally. But this seems a little different. I don't remember like George Soros standing next to Joe Biden and fielding questions. I don't remember other big donors getting involved in government while getting contracts at the same time from the government. Like, he's right there. It seems like a level of corruption and brazen corruption that we haven't seen.
Yeah, I agree. It is true that the rich have always had influence, but to the extent that they have government contracts and they have a vested interest in the policies and they stand to make money from the policies, that's different. It's probably happened in the past, but not to this extent. Trump himself has already made $80 million since being elected, and it's a money grab for the people that are around him, a lot of them, not all of them, but certainly for Musk, between SpaceX, Telsa, all 100 contracts he has right before the federal government. It's obviously a conflict of interest, and it's the same for Donald Trump too. But the problem is there's nobody there to hold them accountable because he's constructed him. He's immune. What's the word? He's got immunity not only from prosecution, but he's got immunity from people who would hold him accountable as well.
It's a very good point because Musk could commit crimes, and if they're federal, Trump will just pardon him, and everybody knows it. Brian, I mean, I think we like our corruption to be more subtle, like Harlan Crow buying Justice Clarence Thomas a house for his mom and private jets and stuff like that. And that's upsets us, but that's what's normally accepted. This, and it doesn't really, I don't accept it. I mean, it's still despicable, but this is so jarring. I wonder if it causes a backlash at one point where people are like, this is just too much. We need some laws. We need rigid conflict of interest laws. We need some laws on restricting big money in politics that can withstand the GOP Supreme Court's scrutiny. That's part of the problem.
Musk is moving so fast that whenever a backlash comes, I'm not sure if it's going to be able to do anything to stop him. It seems like Elon is counting on Donald Trump's dementia to advance far enough very soon so that by the time he becomes incapacitated, Elon will be the only one that can solve whatever problems arise, and we will just be dependent on him.
Maysoon, do you think that's heading in that direction where look, there are times Trump makes sense and there are other times it really doesn't make sense whatsoever, right? And I don't know when at some point the tipping point is going to happen. He is going to be 79 in a few months. He looks, I don't wish him ill physically. I just don't want to carry it with me. He looks awful. I mean, I'm being honest with you. He doesn't look well.
You're such a better person than me.
No, I'm like, he doesn't look well. Like
in traffic, dead.
Like, but at some point, Maysoon, the devil is going to be like to Trump, like, you got to come home. You've done much more than I thought you could. And like, so you got to come back and sit on the right hand. And I got Hitler over here and a whole bunch of other people. Jeffrey Epstein, I think you know him. All right, why don't you guys talk? All right, that kind of stuff. So
listen, the devil doesn't even want him. The devil doesn't want him. Also, I'm convinced that's it, because now I believe every conspiracy theory, because the fact that like Trump went from being a wedding crasher with classified documents in his bathroom to not only back in power, but having unlimited, unchecked power. I think the big thing that we all need to realize is no one cares anymore. Nobody asks to see his taxes. Nobody cares. He could have sex on the White House lawn.
That would be awful. We would care.
Like something
but not for reason, not for ethical reasons, just for vomiting reasons.
No one would care. No one would care. Actually, he could have sex with Elon Musk on the White House lawn, and the GOP, which used to be like anti-LGBTQ, would not care. He is above the law. He can do everything. So we can only pray for two things. One, that he chooses to play golf and maybe push another wife down some stairs to bury next to the next hole and leave the rest of us alone. Or two, that, like you said, the creator decides to smite him in a natural way that doesn't include any violence, and JD Vance becomes president.
It was terrible.
Like, everybody, right. I know, but we all forget that, like, technically Elon Musk doesn't get to ever physically be president because of the whole apartheid Clyde thing. And JD Vance is actually the next in line. So I wouldn't like sleep too much on Vance, because he's out doing really evil things every single day. Like, people were like, hey, you know, this person made fun of Indian people. Don't you feel like as a father of mixed kids, you should be sad? And he was like, nah, it's cool. It's cool. Fraternity, boys, locker room. Let's do it. The man is very dangerous, and I don't think that we should sleep on him.
Yeah, JD Vance is bros before my own children, which doesn't rhyme, but you know what I'm getting at. I mean, like, there's got to be some kind of expression we got to work on. So, Jimmy, I mean, when you look at this first month of Trump, and it's going to be a month on Monday, which is just the longest month of our lives in a way. How concerned are you, Jimmy? Like, you follow politics a long time. I love politics too.
Yeah.
This doesn't feel normal in any way. This seems deeply concerning.
Yeah, well, it's by design. It's confusion by design. That's the game plan. Overwhelm the media. Like Maysoon was just saying, people can't react. There's just the guardrails have been deliberately removed, in the process of being removed. It's confusion by design, and I think the silver lining on all this, if there is one, and it's a warped sense of the term silver lining, but the results of his policies are going to trickle down eventually. They could trickle down, and that's what's going to turn people against him. It's like, are we better off with a reduced Department of Education? Are we better off with a reduced federal workforce? Are we better off with all these, these cutbacks that they want to implement? Are we going to be better off with this foreign policy? all of that. I think the results of that's going to determine whether or not he's going to be popular and how the Democrats, the chances will be coming into the midterms and to 2028.
The Democrats?
Gonna do when it trickles down? They still have no power. You have the Democrats voting in his nominees no matter what. We have a bunch of ridiculous people disassembling every single organization in the government. Tomorrow, when people wake up and they realize they've lost their health insurance or their Medicaid, they've lost their jobs, unemployment is up because they're firing and buying people willy-nilly, it's going to be too late. There's nothing that people can do when the second or the first most powerful man in the world, literally like a superhero movie, owns the satellites. Like, information is controlled by Elon Musk. Once people wake up and realize that, like, the fascism has arrived, it's here, all of our rights were stripped away from us over the past 8 years, including losing most of my rights under Biden, like silly things like freedom of protest was gone under him. What are we going to do? What can the population do? It's time to understand. America has given up on the North American colony. It's investing all of its money in the Middle Eastern colony. And if you want to survive, it's time to move to Dubai.
So the answer for Maysoon is Dubai. I'm telling you, Maysoon Zayid, Brian Wohl, and Jimmy Tingle. I don't think it's as hopeless yet, but it could get hopeless. I do think that there's hope. I think the courts are standing up that if Trump were to defy court orders openly and Republicans are fine with it, then he's a dictator, because then there's no check at all, because Congress, Republicans are a doormat. And the Democrats, at least this week, all voted against Trump's nominees. But in the beginning, they weren't, right? You had Democrats supporting some of his nominees. I'm like, what are you doing?
RFK is in charge of vaccines now.
I know, but it was only Republican votes. There were no Democrats, thankfully. And Mitch McConnell voted against it if he knew what he was doing. So Brian, Jimmy makes an interesting point about when people start feeling it. Now, they're going to lay off about 200,000 federal workers, they announced yesterday. And there's about 75,000 that took the buyout. That is a huge chunk of federal workers, 1,000 from the VA alone, which means overall, if you have a problem with Social Security in the future and you call up, there's no one to answer the phone. If your Medicare payment doesn't go through, good luck calling. There won't be anyone there. Good luck emailing. You're not getting answers. If you're a veteran, you need some services, from prescription drugs, even suicide prevention, there sadly might not be anyone there for everything. FEMA, even passport renewal, which affects people every 10 years if you have a passport. All of a sudden, you're like, I can't leave the country now. You're stuck here like a prisoner. We're refugees sneaking out, like in the bottom of a ship or a railroad. So I don't know how we get out of the country.
Right.
But the point is, Brian, do you think at some point that is a thing? Or we'll talk about inflation in a minute, if that's a thing. But do you think when people say, oh, I think government should be cut, and all of a sudden there's no one there for them, they're like, I don't think it should be cut this much?
Yeah, it really feels like Elon and the Doge group are playing Jenga with the US government. They're just taking out those blocks and stacking them in wherever they want. And soon enough, that tower is going to fall. And by the time it falls, we will have nobody to help us put it back together. It is super scary. And really, we're like, to mix metaphors now too, we're like a frog in a hot plate. It's getting hotter and hotter, and we don't realize that we're going to be boiling until we're already boiling. And I think we're kind of stuck with this. I don't know how we get out of this, Dean.
We're going to get out of it, but I first have to figure out the mixed metaphor here. So the metaphor was the frog in the boiling pot, but there was a hot plate involved. I don't know where the hot plate came. I'm not sure you're mixing them. You're just adding something new. I've not heard. Like, you should have put like some kind, and there's a waffle there and a hot pocket and something. Like, why not? I want everyone to answer this question because, I just saw Senator Chris Murphy and others, and even the mainstream logic is Trump and Musk are cutting the budget to justify a tax cut for the wealthy, right? But in reality, you don't have to. They can still give a tax cut. The deficit is a huge number, which no one really cares about. So is there something else going on? So I want to start with you, Maysoon. I sincerely, you can joke about it or be serious, whatever you want. I'm curious, are we missing something? Is it not that obvious? Are they getting rid of agencies not just because they're going to justify a tax cut? Is there something more sinister, to be blunt? So what do you think, Maysoon?
This is the rise of supremacy, and the rise of supremacy is happening globally. As we see with Modi, and we see what's happening in Europe in places like Hungary and Italy, and especially in Germany now, the supremacy is rising. And one of the first targets of supremacy is killing the elderly and the disabled. This has like been historically, when you look at, you know, supremacy and eugenics and genocides, the first target are the disabled and the elderly. And when you look at the agencies that are being hit up, you're going to really heavily affect the disabled population when you're canceling research, when you're affecting Medicaid, when you're destroying the Department of Education and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, so that you make sure that young students no longer have IEPs and accommodations and the type of things that help disabled kids get through school. So you're killing the disabled population, you're killing the sick population, and then you're strangling the elderly population by having these higher prices that they're priced out from, so they can no longer afford healthy food. So I think that the first goal is to kill as many poor, elderly, and disabled people as possible, because that helps them with like, you know, the bottom line and productivity. And I think the second thing is that they've made a choice, right? You're a billionaire. You can do unlimited good, like Maya Rudolph's character on Apple, which I probably the person who watches it, but I freaking love it. Or you can do unlimited evil, which is what Elon Musk is choosing to do. When you say that Donald Trump is not happy and Elon Musk is not happy, these two guys should be farking happy. They should be the happiest people in the world.
Right.
And Elon Musk has enough wealth to literally become the most famous, most revered person in the world. He could be like a second freaking Jesus if he decided to put his wealth towards feeding and housing people, towards ending freaking violence. But instead, he thrives on violence. He thinks that he's Lex Luthor. And for him, this is all a game. We're all NPCs in his game. And for him, it's just about winning and destroying shit and blowing shit up and showing how easy it is for him, the biggest douche ever born, to control the entire world, which is what he's doing.
Wow. Jimmy Tingle, can you beat that? No, so Jimmy, no, so Jimmy, what do you think? Getting back, because I'm really curious, are we missing something here? Because the mainstream logic, the consensus, they're doing these big cuts to justify a tax cut for the wealthy. Is there something bigger here about making people lose trust in government, let's say, or saying government doesn't work anymore? Is it about privatization? Like, what is your, I don't want to give you an answer. I'm sincerely.
I mean, on a certain level, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you reduce government and then it doesn't work, they say, see, government doesn't work. So part of it is probably for that reason. They want to cut the federal workforce, like you said earlier, huge cuts to the federal workforce, and there's going to be one tenet of that says you can only hire one person back for every 4 people that have been reduced. And so that means the new hire has to do 4 people's jobs. Now, there's only one group of people in the world that can do that, and those are immigrants. So the immigrants are going to be the saviors of the American workforce because they can do 4 American jobs. So I think they should let the Venezuelans stay here, and I think we should have immigration reform because it's clearly we're going to need it. And that's what I meant about my point about as things deteriorate, people are going to sour on this guy. They're going to sour on him, on Trump, on Musk, on this whole crew in there. These money grabbers who are making money off the government, off the taxpayers, and I think it's going to change. And when we say, I'm not doom and gloom about it. It's like we have the vote. Every 2 years we can vote for Congress. And there's special elections going on in New York and other places around the country.
Florida.
The Democrats are going to rally, and we're going to knock off a few House seats, take back the House, and eventually take back the White House. But it's going to take time because it's going to take time for this pain to be felt by people, and they become as outraged as they were, as much as the MAGA people were outraged at Biden. The Democrats are going to be, the Democrat grassroots are going to be outraged at what's going on.
And the Democratic grassroots, from listeners to my show, are outraged. They've been outraged for a while, and especially since Trump came in and started signing all the orders. And some of the outrage is at Democrats, but not fighting. They're trying to fight. They're just not breaking through, and that's part of it. So, Brian, what is your take? Why do you think Musk and Trump are trying to gut the government? Is there something bigger going on that we're missing?
I think they're trying to tank the US economy, and then the larger goal is to tank other government economies so that they devalue currency that's attached to countries. And they want to have crypto be the number one currency. I think that's their big goal, because crypto is something they can make a pump and dump with at any point. And crypto is something that will destabilize every government. And I think that's what it seems to be doing around in Europe. That seems to be what they're doing in Britain, devaluing the pound. And here in America, we're going to see the dollar go down. The dollar has been so strong for the last 4 years, and now we're starting to see it go the other way. And
It's interesting.
I feel that's what it really feels like to me. And I feel like they're going to tank it this summer. And then by the fall, Elon and his rich buddies are going to buy up as much as they can, buy low. And then by the time we realize what happened, they'll be owning everything.
So the crypto bro scheme that's going on. I will say one thing, that people sometimes underestimate the insatiable desire of the wealthy to get even richer. And it's not something that I knew that much about until I recently read a book about the Gilded Age, about the 1880s, 1890s, with Vanderbilt, Rockefeller, and them. And they were rich as the guys in the country, in the world. They were competitive just to make more money and get more power. It never ended. They enjoyed it. This guy Jay Gould, you had a whole list of people, and you're like, wow. And you read about that, and you're like, that motivates them. So like Musk could be the richest guy, but Jeff Bezos is staring at him. It's like, I'm going to take that guy down. And like, it doesn't make sense to us. You're like, if I had billions of dollars, you could do good things and live a good life and help people, like Bill Gates is doing. And they hate Bill Gates, who donates his money and try to help people. What were you gonna say, Maysoon?
There's something really nice about them, and it's the fact that they're not monarchs yet. So like so Trump is a dictator, it's over. He signs executive orders, they become law, he owns the court, it's over, that's done. But monarchy hasn't happened yet. So Elon Musk, who is like just so high on ketamine every freaking night and is gonna drop dead probably in a jacuzzi.
Wow, that's life.
He's not a monarch.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have some like freaking garbage son coming up right after him when he dies. So at least when he ODs and non-violently exits this earth in the way that he's deemed to exit before he gives birth to any more children, please.
A lot of kids. Oh my God.
I know, and he's a friggin' horrible, horrible, horrible dad, like the worst dad you could ever imagine, except his dad, who, married his sister, and I was on a soap opera, it's Valentine's Day, so that's interesting. But, at least
his dad married his sister,
die and not have someone inherit everything.
But he's got a lot of kids. He's trying to build a colony to go to Mars, which I wish we could get him to go to Mars. There's a GoFundMe to get Elon to Mars. I'm there. I will sell my treasury bonds from like my confirmation or from whatever. Like whatever I got, I'll be getting it. So I'm trying to
Maysoon Zayid Brian Wohl with him when he goes to Mars. He's going to and the electricity.
Your point about Starlink is true, and it is concerning. And the fact that too many governments are relying on this one guy and his company makes that leverage something out of a movie. And at the same time, everything that he's compared to, Lex Luthor, a James Bond villain, Rasputin, who I love to compare him to, it doesn't end well for any of them.
No.
That's the one thing. Like, I'm not saying how it's going to end, but I tell people all the time, Google Rasputin. And it's the jealous other nobles who are around the king. In this case, Donald Trump. In that case, it was Tsar Nicholas. And that are the ones that give him cake with poison, then shoot him in the face, tie him up, and dump him in the river. I'm not saying that happens to Elon, but that's what happened to Rasputin, at least allegedly. So, all right, let's talk. This is really a fun conversation, isn't it? So, what's more fun? Oh, this is different. This is about the media here. Before the election, we were told all the time, it's the price of eggs, stupid. It's everyone's inflation. People can't take inflation. It's not abortion. It's nothing else. It's not January 6th. All they care about is inflation. Then we got an inflation report that came out Wednesday, showed prices rose last month for 0.5%. Which might not mean much to people when you're like 0.5%. It was only supposed to go up. They expected about 0.2%. And eggs went up 15% the last month, the biggest jump in 10 years. And it doesn't matter. It's not about saying Trump is responsible for this. It's that the guy campaigned on day one, I'll end the inflation nightmare. That was the term he used. I went back and looked at the inflation nightmare. He's doing nothing. He's blaming Biden. The media is not going like, where's your inflation plan? So, Jimmy, to your point where people get affected, this is very personal. When you can't afford eggs, and I just saw a thing that's kind of concerning that the bird flu is now beginning to go to cows that provide milk. If that happens and we can't have milk either, there's no pancakes. I mean, let's be honest, this is a tough America, but there's no French toast, but people can't afford milk or eggs. I think there's been a lot of anger.
Right. And the reality is Biden doesn't control the price of eggs.
Right.
No president controls really
Sure.
inflation. They don't, it's not like, it's a stupid argument to begin with, but it's an easy thing to blame the previous administration or the president for inflation or the fires in LA or, any of these things that are natural disasters. You can't really blame an administration for a
But
natural
shouldn't Democrats be
disaster.
doing that though? It doesn't matter if you can or not. He campaigned on, I'm going to bring inflation down, and he has
I,
zero plan. That's my
yes.
point. He should
No,
have
no,
like
I
all the
agree.
administration, full administration approach. We're going to bring down the price of cost of eggs and whatever it is, and at least show people you're caring. There was a CBS poll over the weekend. 66% of Americans do not believe he's focused on bringing prices down. When is the last time 66% of Americans agreed on anything about Trump? 66 means MAGA is getting, like, they're feeling the pain too. That's the point of that poll.
I agree with you. I'm just saying that, of course, he doesn't have a plan because what plan do you have to bring down the price of eggs? It's not a government issue. It's supply and demand. What you could do is step up the bird flu vaccines and address the pandemics and things
All
like
right.
that. But with RFK Jr. in there, I don't know what they're going to do when it comes to public health. So,
By the way,
yeah,
Jimmy, does it kill you that RFK Jr., here's a Kennedy? You're a
yeah.
Tingle. You're an Irish American guy from the Massachusetts area. I'm sure you've liked the Kennedys for a long time. And look at this black sheep who is just awful. And he's one that's now Secretary of Health and Human Services.
It's really bizarre. It is. I'm interested in who went to who first. What's her name? Caroline Kennedy said RFK Jr. went groveling to the president for a job. But I wonder if the president did not reach out to him first, because there's a slice of the Democratic Party that likes RFK Jr. There's a slice of America, and it looks like that bipartisan approach, to government. So I don't know actually who reached out to who, but yes, it is disturbing around the vaccines, and I mean, and that affected real people. A friend of mine,
Yeah.
recovering heroin addict, would not take the vaccine. I said, "Why would you take the vaccine?" His exact words were, "You don't know what's in it." I said, "You've been buying illegal drugs on the streets of America for 20 years. What do you think? That was approved by the
Except the Whole
the
Foods is
federal."
organic. Right.
Exactly.
Like
This is,
I'm
go ahead.
obviously I'm
Right.
devoutly anti-COVID vax and also shingles vax, and the COVID vaccine almost killed me and it paralyzed me. I took the Pfizer RNA vaccine and it almost paralyzed me.
That's true.
It almost killed me. I was in the
Right.
ICU.
This is true. She was in the hospital about the whole thing. Yeah.
But childhood vaccines are different. And what we're seeing in like the war-torn regions is like a return to polio. That's how quickly it happens. 1 or 2 years of kids not getting vaccinated, suddenly polio is back. So like what's concerning me right now is childhood vaccines. Like he got approved. He is now in charge. And if they decide to take all these vaccines off of the required list for kids, you're going to have measles, you're going to have mumps, and you're going to have polio resurge in this country that everyone still thinks is going to survive another 2 years to have another election. So go team.
Well, maybe the good thing is if Trump lays off everybody in the HHS, he'll have no one to do that. He'll be like, everybody, there's nobody here. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We're gonna,
One
Jimmy,
point
follow
being,
up. Jimmy Tingle. Yes.
one point, RFK Jr. had his own children vaccinated.
He did. Right. He did.
Yeah.
And yesterday, by the way, Brian, I found this amusing and I watched too much news, but RFK Jr., after he was sworn in, gave his little speech. And yes, I watch it because this is what I do. And he literally thanked God for sending Donald Trump to him. And he said, I prayed on my knees that I could stop the vaccines and save children's lives. That's what he said yesterday. And then God sent me Donald Trump. I'm like, do you think it was God, Brian?
Oh boy, it certainly wasn't. If it was, man, it's Old Testament God then. Jeez
That's a
Louise.
plague, right? Right, the very pestilence, locust, the dogs and cats living together, the whole thing from Ghostbusters.
Mass hysteria.
Mass
Mass
hysteria.
hysteria.
Yeah, I can't remember the whole monologue, but I played it on my show once. I love Ghostbusters. And I love that Bill Murray thing. Dogs and cats living together. Old Testament come to life. That kind of stuff. He's like, oh my God. All right. So let's take a break. We'll talk about the mayor of New York because that was that moment in the movie was when they were talking to the mayor of New York about what's going to happen when Gozar comes. And he's like, really? And that's what he says. And then he has the other line. Yes, this man has no dick. Remember that was a very funny line. Is it true? Yes. It has no. So, all right, let's take a break. We'll come back. More of what just happened with our friends Maysoon Zayid, Brian Wohl, and Jimmy Tingle right after this. And welcome back, Dean Obeidallah Show. It's still Valentine's Day, and all three comedians have remained, which is refreshing. Maysoon Zayid is still here, Brian Wohl, and Jimmy Tingle. So this is interesting. I live in New York City. The mayor of New York is a criminal. I knew he was a criminal when he was running. I had friends who worked at the Daily News who said to me, my friend, I won't say his name, who said to me in emails, if he makes that 4 years without being indicted, it's unbelievable because they knew how dirty he was. A lot of New York reporters, and they would raise it in stories, little things, but there was no one had ever investigated him. So he gets indicted for just like rank low-level corruption stuff, like getting free travel stuff from the Turkish government to expedite like fire inspection things. It's like 1950s type of corruption, but it's still corruption. And you got to prosecute it if you find it. But Donald Trump tells the prosecutors, drop the charges because he's going to work with me on immigration. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I don't like the sound of it. So Maysoon, what do you think the deal is with Eric Adams here and Donald Trump dropping the charges, or at least wanting to drop the charges? They're having some problems right now. Ultimately, they'll drop them. But what's the deal? What do you think you got?
I think, well, first of all, I think it's all crime all the time, everywhere. Like you have to have committed a crime to be part of this administration, part of the government in the US. And poor Bob Menendez. It makes me weep for Bob Menendez, the only person ever to have to leave his job and go to jail for corruption when everyone else is out doing it in the open. I think that what they exchanged was that Eric Adams decided that for Donald Trump, he would start eating meat, but only like McDonald's and fast food and really
He's
like
a vegetarian, in case people don't know, right?
Disgusting meat. That's what he traded. I don't think he traded anything. I think they're just a bunch of crimey criminals, and that Donald Trump likes the idea of undermining the authority of all the different like areas of the Attorney General's offices and SDNY that held his feet to the fire and convicted him in certain cases. And that's all it is. It's like, I commit crimes, you commit crimes, our crimes don't matter. And then Donald Trump gets points with like the Blacks for Trump because he pardoned one black man.
Well, but Jimmy, in the memo from the Trump's DOJ, it said that to drop the cases because it'll help his ability to tackle illegal immigration and violent crime. So here's the irony, isn't it? That Eric Adams is charged with quid pro quo. Like Turkish government did some favors for him. So in return, he did something to the Turkish government. In this case, the Trump administration is like, we're going to do something for you. And in return, you do something for us. Like, isn't this the actual crime that he's charged with on some level? It's oh, he's like, okay, now you're going to help us. And it's legal because you're going to help us. If the Turkish government said to him, free dinner at Ala Turca, which is a good Turkish restaurant in New York City, every night you help us arrest immigrants, that would be a crime. But when Trump administration does the exact same thing, he gets something of benefit, dropping the charges in return for doing something.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's been consistent with Donald Trump is he accuses people of doing what he does.
Yeah.
He always does it. He always does it. He was calling Hillary corrupt before she, for no reason. He was talking about the Biden is politicizing the Justice Department. It's exactly what he's doing. He's talking about, he's notorious for it. It's a way to attack your opponents and accuse them, put them on the defensive, and then he does the exact same thing, accusing Biden of profiting from his position as president while he's doing the same thing. Like I said earlier, $80 million so far the Trump organization has made since he got elected. So it's a classic example of that. And it's also a way to bring, as Maysoon was saying about the African-American community, there was some talk that I was reading in the article there that he might considering running as a Republican, Eric Adams.
Or independent.
And that would be good for the Republican Party. A high-profile African-American mayor of a major city switching into the Republican Party. So it's same old, but it's so blatant and it's right out there. And again, nobody can hold him accountable. But hats off to those two Justice Department people who resigned in protest.
It's like now I think it's up to 6 attorneys from the Justice Department here in New York and then in Maine Justice as well who refuse to drop the charges. Look, if Eric Adams runs as an independent, then we're going to be like, oh yeah, you've got your unethical guy. Well, we got Andrew Cuomo. So like we're going to meet your unethical guy because Andrew Cuomo is going to jump in the polling shows he would be way ahead. I don't think he's the best candidate, but polling shows based on name recognition.
Eric Adams.
I'm sorry?
Said he's better than Eric Adams.
Oh, he's better than Eric Adams. No, I'll give you that. Like he's never been charged with crimes and stuff. He's just
corrupt and have done some sort of crime. So Andrew Cuomo is perfect. He's a crimey guy.
He was never charged with crime. It's different. He was just like kissing people too much. Handsy guy, and he blamed it on being Italian. But so that was the only thing. So Brian, what do you think? What is your theory was really good on the crypto stuff. Any theory on this one with Eric Adams and Donald Trump and what's the deal? And by the way, the charges it's not a pardon. They're just dismissed without prejudice. So they're hanging over Eric Adams' head. Like anything he does wrong is like, guess what? Charges are back.
So I grew up in Illinois where we put 2 former governors in jail back to back. And so I think there is some hope for this Eric Adams case. Unfortunately, we were only able to put those governors in jail after they were governor. But we put in George Ryan, who's a Republican, and then right after that, we put Rod Blagojevich in jail. So I think there is some hope for New York to do this. It's just going to take a dedicated Justice Department following the blueprint that Illinois set. And there is a way to put these politicians that are local politicians in jail and bring them to justice without dealing with the federal corruption in the Trump administration. So this is possible. There is hope for New York. It's just you need a dedicated, diligent group of people in the Justice Department. And if they can hang in there long enough, it's possible. But it's really going to be a game of chicken to see who's able to blink first. And hopefully Cuomo is able to beat Adams, or somebody can beat Adams, because I don't think Adams will be able to go to jail or be brought to justice while he's in office.
Well, as long as Trump is there, unless the local DA, they find charges here. And I'll tell you, the attorney generals, the Democratic ones, are doing a good job litigating a lot of the executive order issues. And at some point, they might have to be the ones that try to do criminal enforcement if they can. If their residents are impacted by some kind of fraud by, let's say, Musk or Trump, you can't charge a sitting president because of the bullshit DOJ stuff, but there's some other things. So we'll see what happens. So I want to touch on that. Maysoon especially touch on this here. So Donald Trump this week tried to pressure our friend Jordan's King Abdullah to take all the Palestinians from Gaza. And if you saw the body language of King Abdullah's like, I can take 2,000 children who have cancer. I'll do that. It's like, oh, what a nice gesture. And same thing with Sisi. He pressured Egyptian President Sisi. We didn't see that, but he pressured him. And they're all like, we're not taking 2 million. But so what is your sense of what's your reaction to that? And where do you think this ends up?
Okay, so I think like the deep, quick political analysis is he was the first president that was invited. He came to Trump and he told Trump, I'll give you and Jared Gaza. You can turn it into your little Monaco Riviera of the Middle East. He didn't mention the white phosphorus and the fact that, the entire place is toxic, like 9/11 was, and what it did to the first responders. So I think that's what happened, is that he literally told him, I'll let you have it. Then the other one again said the quiet part out loud, right? Because this is an American colony and he can actually take Gaza and he can actually do with Gaza whatever he wants. And he doesn't need to buy it, which is why he backpedaled on buying it, because it's his. He doesn't need to buy it. It's already an American colony. However, what I think is amusing is that everybody is ignoring the other half of the superhero film, which is the Palestinians. You cannot kill us. They tried for 15 months to kill us and they declared a ceasefire and 1 million people were like, sup, we're going to walk barefoot back to our houses in northern Gaza. And then we're going to use time lapse on TikTok to rebuild those houses in 48 hours. I can't even vacuum my house in the time it took people to rebuild entire kitchens of destroyed marble. So I don't think that Trump understands People live in all these different places. So like, I think he wants to take over Canada because he thinks it's all white people. He
Right.
doesn't understand the South Asians live there and Asians live there and indigenous people live there. He wants to take over Greenland because he doesn't understand that's 81% indigenous. So, like, I think the whole thing about taking over Gaza and building really nice houses for us, like, they think that we just fell off the refugee cart yesterday. We've been there, we've done that, we've seen the tents, we know it's not nice. They could literally give us all of Dubai with all of the skyscrapers and like Ferrari World and the entire thing. Palestinians won't go. We're
Not
the
any,
olive
a
tree.
few.
Listen, Habibi, there's always a few.
Right.
So
Because
let's say
I mean, that's pretty
100
enticing. You mentioned the nice
yeah,
cars and
100
hotel and everything. I'm like, yeah.
I have 100 people, 10 will go. You
Oh.
can get 10%
Right. If
of
they want to volunteer to go to live, right,
the
that's up to them. It's the
voluntarily
ethnic cleansing
deport them.
part is when you're not.
But
Right.
you're not getting millions to go. And
I
let
know,
me
I
tell
agree.
you, the Israeli population has fled in much bigger numbers than the Palestinian population has in the past 15 months. More Israelis have fled from
I've
the
left the country. I've
left the country, gone either back to like their other home country because they have multiple citizenships, or gone to Cyprus, or gone to any of the neighboring friendly countries that accept them. A lot more of them have fled than the Palestinians. The Palestinians are like, we did this in 48. We know how this ends. We'd rather just die here than be refugeed, than thrown in the Sinai desert. This is why
that's not that.
people
Yeah.
walked back to their homes to give him the finger. And like, there's so much great comedy that comes out of Gaza. And there are so many people making fun of the fact that Trump wants to become their God. They're like, yalla ta'al, come here, let's see you do it.
It's so, Jimmy, look at the big picture. Trump has talked about taking the Panama Canal, Greenland, Gaza, and Canada. I mean, it really wants to expand America's footprint to like all over the world. I mean, why stop there? You know, why not take places like, I want him to take Aruba. I like Aruba, but it takes a long time to go through customs there because it's really busy. Make it a U.S. Let's just take Aruba. I could do that one place. If he goes, okay, everything else I'm putting aside, we're taking Aruba. I'm like, it's the Netherlands. You deal with the Netherlands. You make a deal with the Netherlands. You let the people there be U.S. citizens, and it's like Puerto Rico, but nicer. I like Aruba very much.
Right. I think it is out of the Trump playbook. He uses the media to vet his ideas and to get everybody talking about his ideas, and everybody gets sometimes off the charts, and he says things deliberately to get a rise out of people. And so I think let's see what happens. Let's see what happens with Panama. Let's see what happens with Greenland and in Gaza. I think with respect to Gaza, I think the Israeli lobby was instrumental in helping elect Trump the second time.
Sure.
And he owes them. Now, Bibi Netanyahu can't come out and say, we want the Palestinians, as blatantly as Trump did, we want them to go to Egypt and to Jordan. But Trump can, as the, quote, part of the political calculation there. And the media everybody will talk about it, and it'll be all of a sudden, it'll be on the table. And that's how he works. And we'll see what happens. But I don't know. I don't know what to say about it. It's just a shame that this whole thing could have been avoidable if there was actually in 1993, when they were talking about a two-state solution, and Rabin was assassinated at a peace rally, the president of Israel, by one of the settlers, and that whole philosophy that's who's running the Israelis right now. That's who's running the Israeli government, the right wing.
I agree.
And so it just seems like the whole thing could have been avoided, and it's
a lot of things.
Tragedy
All right,
that hasn't
we only
been.
got a couple minutes left, and I want to give a chance to everyone to plug something. But it's the 50th anniversary of Saturday Night Live. We all have a comedy background. Brian, did SNL have any influence on you, or just as a fan, or as a comedy person? Did it play a role?
I mean, my parents were huge SNL fans, so I realized that in an early age, the only way to get their attention was comedy. So
Wow.
that's all I've ever loved, and it's so great to see this celebration of 50 years of this. and seeing how many different types of performers have been on the show and seeing how the show has reflected who we are as a country over 50 years. I'm looking forward to it.
What about you, Maysoon? We got about a
I
minute
mean,
each.
Gilda Radner, like so much of my career and my personality,
Ah,
who I am, is based on Gilda Radner and studying Gilda Radner. And also, I really, really loved Eddie Murphy and all of Eddie Murphy's characters. I was like obsessed with him as Mr. Robinson. But my favorite sketches were the ones that featured you, Dean Obeidallah.
as an extra. I worked on the show for 8 seasons on the production staff, and I posted some. Maysoon is the Palestinian Rosanna Dana. Remember that? That's Jimmy, what about you? Do you like the show? Did it have an
sure.
impact on you?
Oh yeah. I mean, I can remember watching it in college and people say, you got to watch this. And it was great. And it was the beginning of the comedy boom. It was instrumental in the whole comedy boom, with the clubs and how that just was an outgrowth of watching things like that. I always liked Bellucci and the original cast, but the Weekend Update was always great because if you like, it's sort of like what you're doing, Dean, and everybody here, paying attention to the news, commenting on the news, trying to make it funny, trying to add insight with humor. So that was really instrumental in terms of political humor in the country.
Certainly was, and it pushed the envelope. So I want to give everyone a chance to plug what you're working on. Maysoon, what do you want to say? Where can people find you and what's coming up?
Okay, well, I'm Maysoon.com, and my big show that's coming up is Disco. It's the view after a really bad accent. 4 incredible disabled divas discussing love and relationships at Joe's Pub, February 20th, 9:30 p.m.
Check it out, everyone. Jimmy, what about you? I know you always have a lot of shows going on.
Sure, I'm playing at the Winery in New York City, February 21st. The name of the show is Humor and Hope for Humanity, and you can get tickets at jimmytingle.com. And also, I have a film that is free on the website, jimmytingle.com. It's called The Radical Middle. Why would a comedian run for office? And it's a film a comedy documentary that I made about running for lieutenant governor of Massachusetts in 2018, which Dean happened to do a big spread in what's the name of the
Daily Beast?
The Daily
I wrote
Beast.
about you for the Daily Beast. Yeah, and I had you on my show at the time. So check it out. And what about you, Brian?
Oh, you can see season 1 of Smoke Show on YouTube on the Try Guys channel. You can see me testing out new strains of cannabis with your favorite celebrities like Cheech and Chong, Reggie Watts. So much fun. And then also you can always follow me on social media and see what live shows I'm doing. I'm doing several live shows every week here in LA, and I'll be back out on the road this fall.
Thanks. Great. You were all great. I really enjoyed it. Happy Valentine's Day or not. It's your choice if you want to accept that. We're going to take a break. Be back with more of the show after this. All right, guys. Thank you.